Hey guys, subscribe for daily content. And if you're shopping for gear, make sure you check out the description for the newest items at some of the very best online retailers. There's also links for some of the items that I personally recommend. Thanks!
What's going on YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got another interesting knife review slash knife overview to share with you guys. These are the custom COMRADE automatic knives, which is a collaboration between Nick Chuprin and Menovade. Now these are truly custom. They are made small batch in-house in the United States. Not in the same way that a ProTech or Kershaw USA auto would be made. No, these are actually hand ground, which is something that perks the ears up of people who know what that costs to do. So right off the bat, these are more compact automatic knives, but people are going to aggressively compare them to ProTech and Kershaw. And right there, just want to drop the guillotine. Those are not being hand ground, which means right there, that's going to be a huge difference in price. And also the fact that Kershaw and ProTech are definitely mass producing their knives, not being made the same way that these are. So just want to be clear, because a compact automatic knife is something that's very, very niche, right? It's only going to be attractive to so many people. Add to that the fact that these are substantially more expensive because they are made fully in-house and they have hand ground blades, and we add another layer of niche to that, right? So these are only really meant to be something that certain people are interested in. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. I hope that now, even if it's not for you, I hope you understand why these are going to be priced the way that they are. Thank you so much to Nick Chuprin for allowing me to take a look at these. These are available. They're on his website. I'll link it right down below. You guys can take a look if you want to. Thanks so much to my patrons for supporting me. And please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. We're going to get into the details of these because these are actually pretty cool. I'm just going to keep one on screen for now while we do the size comparisons. So up against, actually, you know what we should do? Probably that would be more helpful is actually measure this knife. The overall length of the COMRADE is coming in at 4.75 inches with a blade length of 2 inches, cutting edge of 2 inches. This is truly a short, stubby little automatic knife. How about some size comparisons? Any custom scales you see here can be found down in the description under Original Goat and Others. So up against the AD10 and the AD20.5, you can see here it is not as short. It doesn't have a short height, right, in terms of blade height or handle height. It's just a short knife. So it doesn't necessarily feel like a teeny tiny knife. It feels like a chunky, short, stubby knife, right? How about up against the Spyderco PM2 and the Spyderco Para 3? Once again, it is stubby. Let's go ahead and do two more here up against the Benchmade Group Chilliner, in this case the Ritter Hogue, and the Hogue Deca, right? There we go. How's the action? I am actually very happy to report that the action on these guys is phenomenal. There is some seriously like a potent power that comes with deploying this thing. And really what's impressive here is the precision machine work, because there's still some machine work that's involved with the scales, right? But this is really, really nice. I mean, every last corner, every last edge of this is just absolute precision. Really, really beautiful. And you do get a nice milled titanium clip. A lot of people wonder, why don't they do more titanium scales on automatic knives? There's an issue, as far as I understand, and there's probably somebody in the comments, in fact, maybe Nick himself can explain this better. There's an issue with galling that occurs with titanium and impact and movement over time. And it just doesn't work super duper well with automatic knives. Now, we do see titanium autos here and there, but not very often. And apparently across the board, this is the reason. This is the issue. These are aluminum scales, 6061 aluminum scales, right? Titanium would throw the balance off. This is already kind of an awkward little chunky little knife, so maybe that's part of it too. But as far as I understand, it's a galling issue with titanium over time. But to get back to the action, in the closed position, the button is just slightly above the frame, which is great considering how this will be mounted in your pocket. People that are worried about automatic knives going off in your pocket, the reason that a lot of times with a button that's recessed like this, you don't need a safety is because if you're carrying this the right way, and believe me, there's lots of people that carry pocket knives the wrong way. This is in your right-handed pocket up against the back seam of your pocket, right? Which means the button is up against your leg. The only way that this is going to go off in your pocket is if you have something else in your pocket that is specifically right between your leg and that button, and there's enough of that thing to actually push the button in. Pretty unlikely scenario. I wouldn't worry about it. If you are worried about it, don't carry anything else in your pocket other than your knife, right? Which is hard for some people, but just to kind of paint a picture there. Anyways, pushing the button doesn't take much travel to get it to go, and man, does it go. For a small knife and a blade that is heavy relative to the overall size of this particular knife, it's got a pretty impressive amount of power. Like, it really feels good. You push it and bam. And the other one is identical. There is no difference here. These are exactly the same thing. So pretty impressive action, very satisfying for such a tiny knife. And it's fun to play with. I can promise you that whatever your expectations are when it comes to different sizes of automatic knives, whether you're somebody who has no idea or somebody who's handled 1,000 different automatic knives, if you deploy this, you're going to go, wow. Like that's going to be the reaction that you get out of it. So very happy with the action. Feels good for the size of knife that it is. Let's go ahead and do carry profile. So the thickness up against the Spyderco Para 3, actually it's just a tad thicker, not much. Length and height up against the PM2 and Para 3. Despite the frame and just the size of it just being a taller knife for the size of knife that it is, it's gonna carry pretty well. It's pretty compact. I mean, it's not tall enough to be considered like cumbersome in any dimension, right? So yeah, it's good. You're gonna have a good carry experience with this. Not quite small enough that you'll forget about it. I think there's enough here. It's wide enough that you'll remember, oh yeah, that thing is in my pocket, right? It's not gonna be like the mini bug out or teeny tiny ultra lightweight knives. You're gonna remember that it's there. Let's go ahead and weigh it on that note. So what are we looking at for materials here? So this is, as far as I know, and I forgot to take a picture of the thing. If I'm wrong, I'll correct myself in the video. I believe these are CTS XHP, which is a steel that I very much like. CTS XHP is often described as a powder-formed D2 that is stainless. That's pretty cool. D2 has some good properties, and one of the things that holds it back is the corrosion resistance. When it's heat treated properly, D2 actually has really excellent, or CPM D2 specifically, because this would be powder formed. Regular D2 is not powder formed. CTS XHP is powder formed. And again, this is not a perfect comparison, but just to give people an idea, CTS XHP is a powder formed steel. That's a carpenter steel, right? So we're getting really good edge retention. We're getting really good corrosion resistance. We're getting decent toughness. And honestly, it's a steel that's not super duper tricky to sharpen or touch up. So I don't know why we don't see more XHP. It's a good balance. And I love this steel on a range of different things. Cold Steel used to use it a lot more. Nowadays, we really only see it on stuff that's kind of a little bit more obscure, or some of the stuff that's more expensive, right? But I really like it. So CTS XHP on that. We have aluminum. And then I believe there's a little bit of steel on the inside of the pivot, and then a titanium, as far as I know, pocket clip. The weight on this knife, I'm going to guess it probably doesn't come in much more than 2 ounces, but let's find out. Yeah, 2.72. Okay, so not perfect ratios, but hey, when it's under 3 ounces, it's like I've been saying since the beginning of this channel. If it's under 3 ounces, I honestly don't care about the balance or anything. I mean, it's a sub 3 ounce object. It's just not going to be that noticeable in the pocket, right? Anyways, excuse me. My nose is running like crazy. The blade stock thickness here, let's measure that real quick. Coming in at 120, it's saying 125. That makes sense to me, 125 thousandths. Let's go ahead and get out my tools and do a hardware check. As per usual, my tools are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them right down in the section of my description that talks about the tools I use on this channel. Yeah, it's most likely going to be a T8. I just have to find it on this one here. Yeah, let's take a look at the pivot there. No, he went bigger. Nice. I love that. It's proof here that we're looking at a substantially smaller knife than your average pocket knife, right? And he still went T10. So whatever, some of these other companies, whatever your fear is about having larger fasteners on smaller knives, here's a great example. Why not do this? Every time. Why are you doing, I mean, like, God have mercy on some of these companies who are like, yeah, for the pivot, T6, that's a good idea. That's a terrible idea. But on top of that, you also don't have to, I think these are actually going to be hex down here. You don't have to have a small fastener on a small knife. In fact, I think it's almost ever more important to have that much more control. A lot of people say, just make sure your tools are, I say that too. Make sure you have quality tools, right? These are WIA. I still hate T6. I don't care how high quality the tool is. T6 and smaller, they blow. They suck, right? Well, I don't know how we decided that blow and suck meant the same thing, but they do, period. So smaller knives, larger fasteners. Larger knives, larger fasteners. It's just better. T8 or bigger is the way to go. This is not going to be a difficult object to take apart, but it will have a spring in there. So if you've ever taken apart an automatic knife and tried to put it back together, I have. It's not the most fun thing in the whole world if you're new to it, but it is possible. And as is the case with all things, the more you do it, the better you get, right? I mean, case in point, look down in the comments section. You're going to have a ton of people down there telling you it's not really all that hard. Those people had to start somewhere and then build up to the confidence that they are now after having left that comment. So I'm telling you, as somebody who has done it a few times, it's not fun the first time and it is a little bit tricky. So just, bear that in mind. What I love about this design is it's the same with a lot of different designs is we have the screws going in here and then going through to the other side of the frame, but not all the way through. So they actually are hidden here. You just have two screws and the pivot, which is cool. I also love that he did a captive, like a custom pivot with his logo. And that logo itself actually keeps the thing from free spinning. So that's a nice little touch there. Very cool. All right, we weighed it. We did the hardware check. We did the blade stock thickness. I think it's time to move on here. So Nick sent me some information in a DM on Instagram, and I think rather than trying to just explain that in my own words, I'm actually just going to read what he says so we get this all right. These knives are custom. And the blades are hand ground by Menovade. Now, let's think about that for people who are like, well, that's not an element I value. That's fine. At the end of the day, I know this is a problem with every single small, expensive knife on the market. People are unable to cope with the fact that it can exist, that these things can exist, and that there is actually a market for them. When things are small and price is big, caveman brain not understand, want to pound dirt, right? Oh, what is fire? Right? It's just really difficult for some people to comprehend. It does. This can happen because of the amount of time it takes to create these things. It doesn't matter that object is small. What matters is, where is it made? How is it made? How long does it take to make, right? Now, even if the vast majority of the potential market for this item is not interested, if enough of the market is interested, then it creates a foundation for its existence, right? They don't have to cater to everyone. They only have to cater to enough people that care and want to, purchase stuff like this. So I'm glad that it exists. Even if the population of people who might be interested in it is much smaller, it's nice that those people are catered to. Specifically people who are looking for a small, compact automatic knife that is made fully or like 99% in-house and the blade is hand ground. Now that's, again, all of those elements combined, that's not something that everybody wants, but it certainly is something that some people want. So it's nice that that's catered to, right? Right off the bat, having the blade hand ground should be enough for most people to understand, okay, yeah, that's definitely going to cost more. And it does, because you can't hand grind these things and then make an absolute monstrous number of them. It's just not going to happen, right? It's human competing with machine. It doesn't work, right? So yeah, that's going to cost more. And what's really impressive is that's some super duper accurate hand grinding, if that's the case. I mean, that's the first thing it says here in this message. I'm going to be honest with you. I would not have guessed that. Maybe my eye is not good enough, but if this is done by hand, this is spectacular. Like, holy moly. And at first I thought maybe he meant hand sharpened. even if it's just hand sharpened, that's unreal. Like the level of accuracy there. Then again, no, it's Menovade, and Menovade is a name that many of you will be familiar with, and he's been around for a while. So it's not like this is somebody who's new to grinding knives or anything like that. They are working to create a machine ground production version for 300 or under, which is much more in line with what people would expect to see. I mean, that's a lot closer to how ProTech is pricing their knives, right? But again, ProTech is a much larger company, so we still have to leave a little room there. The collaborative one-hand mechanical rapid automatic deploying edge, aka COMRADE. That's where they get the name there. So that's fun. Brought to you by NCC Knives and Menovade. The COMRADE was 2 years in the making to perfect the mechanism and combine the design stylings from both makers on this tiny but mighty collaboration. The COMRADE is an amalgamation of the best aspects of both companies. Its durable construction, strong, fast deployment, and perfect balance makes it a must-have tool for anyone looking for a reliable, compact, everyday carry. Experience the perfect fusion of engineering and performance with the COMRADE and elevate your EDC to new heights. Sorry, I had to move something at the bottom of the screen there. But that's the information that he gave me there. And I mean, a lot of what he's saying there is if you're looking for specifically this, then we make this, right? So that's cool. That's what you're looking at here. There's probably a number of other colors these come in. I don't know if it's just blue and black. I would venture to guess that there's more, but you'll have to go to the website and actually check it out. As far as the cutting edge, what's nice here, oh gosh, am I going to sneeze? We don't edit out the sneeze. We leave them in. Let me get a piece of paper here. I want to show you guys the edge. This knife is tall enough, even with this very prominent flat. This initial grind is hollow ground, and man, it gets really, I mean, if I can get my camera to focus on it, that gets thin. I mean, that gets aggressively thin. Let me try and get this to bite. There we go. Wow. Sorry, it's hard to hold this exactly where I'm trying to hold it. There we go. What was happening here is I was catching right behind this line here, but we can see, you know, the initial bite is giving it a micro curlicue right there. That's a thin edge. Then you have a thicker edge out here, right? It's a flat ground edge, but this will work for general EDC tasks, right? For most of the stuff throughout the day, I don't need a blade that's much larger. Now, obviously some people do. Some people are going to need a larger knife day to day. Depends on what you're cutting and how thick it is, how dense it is, right? For me, day to day, I don't really need much more blade than this, but I like to carry larger knives because it just is cool, right? You know, I'm not really a smaller knife guy, but even though this isn't my preference, I can still understand and appreciate, you know, its existence. It's a nice compound tanto, right? Like I said, hollow and then flat. We have a prominent flat right here, maintaining thickness out to, you know, quite a reasonable distance. We have a nice swedge right here. Nothing delicate about the tip, even at 125 thousandths. I mean, the thing is so short. XHP is plenty tough. I think this is good geometry for that too. There's honestly a number of steels that would work just fine with this geometry. It's almost an all-purpose. The geometry is meant to be a stronger geometry, right? So having the initial edge be hollow and then this one flat out here with relative thickness out to the tip at 125 thousandths, it's a pretty good balance, you know, of potential edge performance to strength ratio. Listen to this guy talking like he knows. But that's what I see, right? It's a popular grind. It's just fun to see it, you know, so short. It's like I said, I don't traditionally like smaller knives. I like to carry a larger knife. I like to be able to get a more substantial purchase on my knives. Now, this is definitely a 3-finger position knife. There's really only one way to hold it, and it's like this. I mean, you could hold it like this, right, if you're opening packages or whatever. And in that position, it actually works pretty well. Ben would love this because the blade's going to be much shorter than his index finger. But yeah, it'll work there. And the fact that there is more to hang on to this way is what's making me kind of enjoy this more than your typical small auto. Usually knives of this size are about, you know, I would say like 20 to 30% shorter this way. Same with the blade. And that just makes me not like it because it makes me feel like it's too small to really get a good purchase on while I'm using it or while I'm deploying it, right? This, I just feel like there's more to hang on to. And it also makes me feel a little bit better about using it or applying more pressure to it. I don't know why. That's really just a feeling thing, but I'm just letting you guys know how I think there. I don't know if there's any other finishes that are, you know, available for this knife, but the finish that they've applied on there, which is also apparently done by Menovade, it looks nice in contrast with the blue, right? and in contrast with the black. These Type 3 hard coat anodizings are nice and even. It's exactly what you'd expect. There's nothing weird. There's no hard edges or anything coming off, or like there's no fraying, or there's no improper lining up of everything. I mean, these guys are professionals. They're going to make a super nice knife. And if you're familiar with Nick Chuprin or Menovade, then this should be no surprise. You're going to get a quality product here. The hardware being sunk into the frame, I think, is nice. There's a little lanyard hole right there. I like what they did with this area back here. This is a seam construction, but you can see that it's beveled there right at the center to give more of a backspacer look, and it's a nice touch because a lot of companies they just bring them together, which is also fine, but this is nice. It looks a little bit better. The pocket clip is, I don't believe, nested into the tie. I think it's just sitting on top. Well, no, it's got to be, because it doesn't move at all. It must be ever so slightly nested into the aluminum. And then we have just the ramp right here. It's kind of a thin pocket clip. I think it would have looked better with a slightly thicker pocket clip and a slightly shorter pocket clip, but that's just me. Truthfully, in and out of the pocket, it works just fine, and there's plenty of retention without it being too pinchy, right? It's just a little bit thin for my taste. The stop pin is located in its traditional position, and we have no shouldering, but it doesn't necessarily need it, right? Your lockup is definitely, it's absolute. There's no blade play up, down, left, or right. No button stick or anything like that. No pivot lash, and man, there's just that feeling when you close it. It's such a solid and, absolute feeling. It just feels really good. This does not feel like it's going to suddenly spring out, right? Without you pushing the button. It really is a nice, secure feeling. It gives me a lot of confidence in the design. And, I have to emphasize this again. I was really surprised when he said that the blades were hand ground, because every inch of this knife feels like an ultra precision production knife. I mean, if it didn't say Nick Chuprin on it, and what I'm about to say, you have to understand, is meant as a massive compliment. Some people don't care to admit this. Some people are just not aware. But if you're one of those two parties, let me tell you, the nicest and most precision knives that I've ever handled, outside of just a couple here or there, are like made by some of the best Chinese OEMs on earth. Their ability to machine things at an absolutely superior level is just absolute. It's very, very rarely contested, right? So a lot of times when you handle something that has minor imperfections and has little goof ups here or there, it's an indication of it being made by hand in the United States or other countries, right? That's the weird, that's a weird idea for people to comprehend, especially when you're newer. So when I pick up something like this, if it didn't say Nick Chuprin on it, because this is very, very like ultra precision made, if it didn't have his logo on it, right, and I didn't have any information, a part of me would think this very well could be something that is precision made in China by one of the premier OEMs, right? But the big indicator would be, but probably not, because it's automatic, right? We don't generally see a lot of autos coming from China. So what I'm saying here, it's very refreshing to have something like this that is this well made here in the United States, and it's actually got hand elements in it. That's amazing, right? So all that in mind, for people who actually managed to stay and watch this whole video, right? Because you're going to get some people who they watched for 30 seconds, they looked up the price and dropped their complaint and then left, right? But if you manage to stay here till the end, you can understand why I'm pretty impressed with this at $400, right? Yes, it is small, and yeah, it may not be super appealing to everybody, but I got to be honest, I don't really have much of an issue with that. I mean, there are definitely some other, 400 to 500 US autos out there that are also pretty well made, but I've handled some of those, and they're not always, the most precision things that I've seen. I've got a really nice Hinderer US auto that's much larger, and it's full titanium, but that big guy's about $650, right? And there's some other companies that are close, but they're not quite as precision, right? So some people are going to look at this and think that's fine. They're still overpriced, and some people are going to look at them and think the way that I do. The only time it really matters is if you're actually considering buying it, right? In which case, you're going to have to compare this to its realistic competition, which is other small batch USA compact automatic knives that are hand ground. And that's ultra specific. But even with that being the case, there's not a terrible amount of competition for these out there, right? I think what it really comes down to is there demand for this stuff, right? So I'm not super upset about the price, but as somebody who's not particularly interested in smaller U.S. hand-ground automatic knives, right? Personally, right, I can't say that there's a ton of value here for me, but I can understand how they arrived at the price tag. I hope that's fair. And I hope that you guys can understand that, you know, without taking the typical knee-jerk reaction and just being like, comparing it to ProTech. It's just not, ProTech or Kershaw, it's just not a fair comparison, right? But these are fun. These are interesting, and I will definitely leave the link in the description so you guys can check them out. Thanks again to Nick for sending these in. I don't get to keep these. These are going back. Please make sure to follow me on Instagram at metal_complex. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like, so check those out. And if you enjoy all my content, go ahead and click on that Metal Complex logo right there and subscribe because there's definitely more coming. Thanks again for watching, everybody, and have a great day.